round bomb.
Oh, all right, let's get it done. So my next topic is, the sharks and skates. So some additional work that we've been doing within the lab with some of my colleagues, and a special mention to Camilla Seguti, who was a master's student that we had that really helped this work along and made it happen. So we have a lot of data within CFAS, over a century worth of data collection at sea. And we wanted to look at changes in the distribution of sharks, skates, and rays, because they're key species in terms of, our worries about biodiversity loss. Because sharks and skates, they're quite vulnerable to capture from fisheries at an early age, but they're quite slow growing and late maturing. So if you catch them early and they don't have the chance to reproduce, you're not just taking out the individual, but you're affecting the population in a much greater fashion. And since their fecundity rates are low, we deplete their population, they'll take much longer to recover than other more productive species. And already we've seen that some species have disappeared from some areas, such as the white skate, and other species are reduced to quite patchy distributions, such as the ungulate ray. And there are still quite large bycatches of elasmobranchs in European seas. So these are the main skates and rays that we expected to find in the North Sea. 8 of the species were recorded to species level reliably in our data. That's the starry ray, common skate, the thornback ray, and the spotted ray. A couple of species, the shagreen ray and the small-eyed ray, we just don't sample well enough. And the sandy ray, cuckoo ray, blonde ray, and undulate ray, although present in our data, they weren't present enough that we could use them to make temporal signals or look at changes in distribution over time. So we're going to focus this talk on the starry ray, the common skate, the thornback ray, and the spotted ray from the skates group, in addition to some sharks. And these are the sharks. So we catch a lot of spur dog, we catch tope, we catch smoothhounds, and lots spotted dogfish in quite large numbers in the North Sea. And we've also caught the odd greater spotted dogfish and angel shark, although not for some while. So the latter two species in grey were too rare really in our fisheries data. But the top 4 sharks there, we have data, as I said, going all the way back to 1902. And of course we've had many research vessels since the Huxley in 1902, all the way up to the Endeavour since 2003. And we had to go back and digitize an awful lot of paper records to identify the changes in these species. And there are lots of issues when you're using historical data that you simply can't surmount, but we did our best to sort of standardize the area. So in the early 1900s, we sampled the southern North Sea particularly well. So although we sample further north now, we're restricting our analyses to that particular period. And that's just showing the distribution of the sample locations. If we look at the community level, where we have all skates and rays combined, including those unidentified, the dots here show where we've sampled, and the red dots are where we caught skates and rays, and the grey dots, which are hard to see, are where we didn't catch them. And the more red the map underneath, the higher the likelihood of catching these individuals. So the more red it is, the more often we catch them in the survey. As you can see, in the early 1900s, we caught a lot along the UK coast. And then since the 1980s, the skates and rays have really moved north and west. And in that same period, although more variable in terms of the sharks, we saw this sort of outbreak and occurrence of sharks across the North Sea. So perhaps there's been some switching there. To look at each species individually, the common skate complex is quite interesting. There's a number of species we realise now that we're keeping as one group. They're associated with colder, deeper waters, and we haven't found them in the survey for a long, long time. So, there's a complete loss of biodiversity in this area, although we do catch them further north. The thornback ray is associated with these warmer, shallower waters, and that has also reduced in distribution over the decades. And now retracted to that southwestern corner of the North Sea, where we've shown that productivity is a bit lower than the previous thought. And then we have the spotted ray and the starry ray, which are also more variable, but as you can see, since the common skate and thornback ray have retreated, we seem to be finding more of these individuals in the southern North Sea. There are potentially some species identification issues with thornbacks and starry rays, but the trends that we see here, we're quite confident in. In terms of the sharks, we had similar issues where taupe associated with the warmer, shallower waters, they've sort of decreased recently, but we did see a sort of resurgence of them in the 80s. And the same with the spur dog, which have supported quite big fisheries in these waters. They seem to be moving to deeper waters, so they also did quite well in the 80s and then retreated again. And the smooth hound and the lesser spotted dogfish, we didn't catch very many of those in the early days, but now we seem to be catching more of them. So in terms of biodiversity of the group, there's some switching going on, some species potentially replacing others. But there's not a clear signal when it comes to climate change. You can't say the colder ones are moving north and the warmer ones are moving south. It's not quite as simple as that, because obviously there are interactions between which sediments that they prefer as habitat and those species that are more impacted by fisheries than others, and some that are more resilient to discarding practices. So the key message is really we've seen that the largest species, actually, if you group them in that way, have really been extirpated from the southern North Sea. So the angel shark and the common scapeweed we don't find anymore. And the Thornback Ray, the taupe and the spur dogs, these large species, they've had these long-term declines, and we see that in the catches also. But it's the smaller species, that's what unites them, really, that have increased recently. So the starry ray, the spotted ray, the lesser spotted dogfish, and the smooth hound, though not small species, smaller, they seem to have increased recently. And that might be because they have a greater resilience to bycatch and discarding. If you catch a lesser spotted dogfish, it'll be wriggling around on the ship until you put it back again. So overall, there's perhaps a shift from a historical dominance of the larger predatory species, which have a high commercial value, the spur dog, for example, and now we have a current prevalence of the smaller, more productive species. They're often of low commercial value, potentially, doing better with climate change, but that's not clear at all. And we published this last year in Global Change Biology. And also the maps that are shown there, a lot of them are available in the app that we recently released via iPhones and smartphones, where you can go in and have a look at the actual abundances of the various sharks and rays over this 100-year odd period. Thank you.